I'm Scott Webster with Central Atlantic Toyota Technical Training, and I want to talk to you about ASE tests, everyone's favorite topic. So we want to give you some tips and tricks and maybe some help at getting you through passing an ASE test. All right, so let's start with what is ASE. So ASE is a outside organization. They're not government regulated, but they are nonprofit. And their whole idea was to help automotive industry have some sort of testing, some sort of regulation that would prove that technicians know what they're talking about. Toyota likes being involved with ASE. We're heavily involved with ASE. If you want to be an expert tech, you've got to pass some ASEs. We like being involved because it's another organization that proves that what we're teaching our technicians actually is the right information. So if you can pass an ASE test and you can make it through a Toyota training class, you got two sources of where you've got your information from. The government likes that type of counter check. All right, so question development. Everybody always says that ASE test questions are tricky and they're not written right. ASE actually does a good job of trying to make these tests as accurate as possible. They use a group of what we call SMEs, subject matter experts. They actually get together. I've done these. Everybody at our training center has done one at one time or another. You spend a couple of days in a room with 10 or 20 other people. They write questions, they throw it out, everybody talks about it, everybody says, I like it, I don't like it. They finally come down to, okay, this is a good question. Then they're not done. Right down here, test questions are constantly monitored for performance. All right, when you go to take a test for the first time, say this engine repair test up top here, that's got 60 questions. See that asterisk? Certification tests contain 10 additional research questions. Here's what ASE is doing. They're throwing 10 questions in there that actually won't count against your score, but you have no idea which 10 they are. What they're going to do, if somebody absolutely bombs the test, but they got that question right, that question was probably too easy. If somebody did really great on the test, but they got that question wrong, well, that question's probably too hard or confusing. They want to see a certain percentage of people get that question right and wrong. And they will try this with tests multiple times. When they're convinced that the test has gone through this research and that it's a good question, then it becomes an actual question that they use over and over again. But when you're taking these, sometimes you'll notice, you'll read some questions and you go, it doesn't seem right. That may be one of those research questions. But don't guarantee it is. You still got to take the question as if it's part of the test. Okay? One other thing from this slide I want to point out. If you're taking any of these, you notice 50, 60 questions, and they give you an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to take those tests. That basically means you need to basically be doing a question a minute. Now, I don't want you getting stressed out. I don't want you, I got to run through these quick. But if you're not moving through these on a regular basis, you're going to run out of time. And you need to read the question, read the answers, come up with a basic idea, pick your answer, and move on. If you spend 5 minutes on one question, you're really running out of time to answer a lot of them. So take your time, but try to move through them fairly quickly. If you're doing research, your time is shorter, but you also have less questions to do, and there's no research questions on the research. So you get all the good ones after you've taken the test multiple times. All right, there's basically 4 types of questions. Okay, you can see 75% of the questions are direct and completions, which are just basic questions. Tech A, Tech B, everybody always hates these. I actually think ASE's cheating here because they're basically asking you 2 questions but getting credit for 1. Because basically these guys, you have to answer both of them. Okay, and then accept questions can be really confusing because there's 1 incorrect answer, that's the right answer, if that makes sense. And there's 3 right answers that are the ones they're not looking for. They're looking for what won't cause the scenario. All right, so let's go through a couple of these and see if we can help you out with some tricks here. So first question, pretty basic direct question. Vehicle is equipped with 4-wheel disc brakes, has 1 brake rotor that's overheating. Which of these could be the cause? All right, reading the question right off the bat. There's information that's probably important. It's a 4-wheel disc brake car. That may be important. It's 1 brake rotor that's overheating. That may be important. I can pretty much guarantee you when they tell you 1 versus all of them, that's a good hint. All right, so we don't want to jump at our first gut reaction. When we read a question like this, there's probably something that pops into your mind. I know sticking caliper is what I'm thinking of. Okay, one caliper sticking, making a rotor overheat. So then we go down and we start looking at our answers. I got to read them all, think about them all. Don't jump at the first one that sounds right. Overfilled fluid reservoir. Does that have anything to do with overheating brakes? No, not at all. That's just a answer thrown in there to see if you understand anything about brakes. Leaking vacuum brake booster. Okay, again, vacuum brake booster. Would that have anything to do with overheating? Somebody might stretch this into maybe it's sticking because it's leaking and it's holding the brakes on. Okay, even if it is holding the brakes on, is it going to overheat one rotor or all of them? It's going to overheat all of them, isn't it? Same thing with leaking master cylinder. If the leaking master cylinder had anything to do with it, wouldn't it be all of the brakes, not just one of the brakes? So here, by going through here, I've looked at it, I said, well, this has nothing to do with it. This really has nothing to do with one. This has nothing to do with one. So then it's got to be this one, right? Collapsed brake hose. What the heck? Some of you guys may be shaking your head going, oh, yeah, I've heard about this or I've seen this. This is kind of rare, but it does happen, and it's on so many brake tests. This is another thing with this question. Sometimes you need to ask yourself, what is the point of the question? What piece of knowledge are they checking if I know about? And this is one of those. A collapsed brake hose. If that brake hose collapses internally, right, when you push on the brake pedal, you raise the brake pressure high enough, it squeezes fluid through that hose, applies the caliper. But now when you take your foot off the pedal, that's a check valve, right? It's closed. It won't let the fluid come back out. Now my caliper's stuck on. That's going to overheat that rotor, turn it blue, right? And it's just going to be that one circuit that collapsed brake hose is a problem with. All right, if you've never heard of that, write that down because you will see a test question on that. That comes up all the time. All right, but this is a great example of reading the question, paying attention to the specifics, going through all the answers. If 3 of the answers are wrong, that last one's got to be right. If I'm sure these 3 are wrong, this one's got to be right, whether I've heard about it or not. Does that make sense? It seems a little weird to jump at it just because the other 3 I know are wrong, but that's got to be the right answer. And that is exactly it. Collapsed brake hose. That'll definitely do it. I ran into that once in the 40-some years I've been fiddling around with cars. I ran into this one time, but I've seen it hundreds of times on tests. All right, let's go to completion. So completion, again, is another basic test question. It's just a little different version of it. So we're reading the whole question again. Right rear tire on a vehicle with independent rear suspension has wear on the inside edge of the tread. This can be caused by excessive what? All right, if you've done alignments, you're probably thinking inside edge of the tire tread, that's either toe or camber, okay? But how many tires are we talking about? 1 tire. So toe should wear both tires equally, right? Whether it's on the front or the rear, toe should wear both. And then camber normally is the one that will, if I have camber out on just 1 tire and it's independent rear, so 1 tire can be separate from the other, camber should give us edge wear on 1 tire. So going to my answers here, toe in. Right, some people would jump at toe in because, like I said, they think, oh yeah, inside edge wear, that's towing. This is what we call a valid distractor. Every question, when ASE goes through the writing, they try to make a valid distractor. And let me tell you what valid distractor means. It means it's 80-90% correct, but it's not 100% correct. Every question has a 100% correct answer, and then it's got a valid distractor. And this question actually has 2 valid distractors. Toe in, there's some people that say, oh yeah, toe in will cause inside edge wear, but not on just 1 tire. Then you got positive camber. We got thrust angle. We'll come back to that in a minute. And I got negative camber. Didn't we say camber will make 1 tire wear? All right, now I got to remember what's the difference between positive camber and negative camber. All right, so positive camber is when the top of the tire is towards you, car's over here, top of the tires pointed out, car's going down the road like this, that would be positive camber. Negative camber is when the top of the tire is tilted in. Negative camber is actually what we want. It gives us better handling, okay? But if the inside edge of the tire is wearing, that's going to be a negative camber situation, right? That would cause this on one tire. And the fact that it's independent means the other one's probably straight up and down and only one of them is negative cambered in. So negative camber is the answer we're looking for here. Toe in is my valid distractor a little bit. Positive camber, definitely a valid distractor, because if I can't get in my head straight which one's which, I could pick positive. And thrust angle is just where the rear tires are pointed. And if they're really bad, they could be wearing tires, but wouldn't they be wearing tires equally because of the way they're pointed? So again, this one's wrong, this one's wrong, this one's wrong because of the angle, so negative camber is my right answer. All right, our famous Tech A, Tech B. Biggest thing I can tell you about Tech A, Tech B, 2 independent statements, okay? You need to treat this as 2 separate questions. These guys are in different rooms. They've talked to you at different times. They're not arguing with each other. So the tech's measuring starter amperage draw, right? The reading observed on the meter is above spec. So right away, how many times have you guys measured starter amperage draw in the past 10 years? Probably never. So amperage is work. So if your starter is above spec, if your starter is drawing too much amperage, it is working too hard. So I got starter that's working too hard. A says low engine compression. Low engine compression should make the starter easier to turn. So that's definitely wrong. And right off the bat, here's a cool trick with A and B. If I know A is wrong, I just eliminated half of my answers. It can't be A only because I said A is wrong. And it can't be both A and B, right? Because A is wrong. Then what about B? Low resistance between the positive battery post and the cable clamp could be the cause. Don't I want low resistance between the battery post and the cable clamp? Right? Low resistance is a good connection. A good connection is not going to make the amperage draw more, make the starter work more. If anything, it's going to make the starter work correctly. So here's one other point. Both of these are wrong, right? Both of these are wrong, correct? All right? Technicians are paid to find something wrong with the car. We always hate to put neither. This is a neither A nor B. If you have been through the process, you've read the question, right? You've read all the answers, you've gone through, you're sure both of these are wrong, pick neither. That is a correct answer. Just techs are afraid to pick it. All right, accept questions. This always drives people nuts because you are going to have 3 correct answers and 1 wrong answer. And the wrong answer is the one you're looking for. You're looking for what won't cause this. So, technician observes white smoke or vapor coming from the vehicle's exhaust. This could be caused by all of the following except. All right, white smoke or vapor coming from the exhaust. Cracked cylinder head. Coolant getting into the exhaust. Absolutely. Right, that'll do it. Leaking water pump. That water pump's going to leak externally, right? Is that going to get anything in the combustion chamber? No, I don't think that's the right answer at all. That might be the one we're looking for. That's the except, right? So let's mark that. Move on. Leaking head gasket. Definitely cause white smoke. Coolant getting into the combustion chamber again, similar to a cracked cylinder head. Normal startup operation. Again, this is one asking you, what's the point of the question? Do you know that a modern car that sat for a little bit gets condensation in the exhaust, and during the first couple of minutes of startup, it's going to pump white smoke out the exhaust, right? And you've probably all had a customer come in and say, hey, there's something wrong with my car, when you actually say, no, it's just because you let the thing sit for a couple of days. So we're looking for the except. We know cracked cylinder head will make white smoke. Leaking water pump probably won't. Leaking head gasket definitely will. Normal startup operation will. So what's our incorrect answer? Leaking water pump. Okay? Read the question, make sure you go through the answers, and pick what you think is the incorrect answer. All right, then this is probably the most difficult one. Something with a diagram, a wiring diagram or some sort of flow diagram, something like that. We need to analyze the diagram. And some guys like doing it before they read the question. Some like doing it afterwards. Either way, we got to figure out how the diagram works. So let's read our question first. Fuel pump in the vehicle illustrated as in-op. So my fuel pump's not working. That's my problem. All right. When the technician connects a multimeter as shown, all the way up here, 4.93 volts is measured during engine cranking. All right, so if I've got less than 5 volts at a 12 volt fuel pump, that's why my fuel pump's not working, correct? That's my issue. All right, then he adds something. When battery voltage is applied to the prime connector, so he puts 12 volts here, that prime connector goes up through here, the pump runs normally. All right, that's a cool little flat rate diagnostic trick, right? I put 12 volts there, I get the fuel pump to run. That tells me fuel pump works, right? All right, now, which of these could be the cause? So let's look at this diagram and make sure we understand everything about it. So over here, 12 volts from the battery going through a fuse, through the relay. When the relay closes, this switch is going to pull closed. Voltage is going to move over. My fuel pump's going to run because it's got a good ground. Okay, what turns the relay on? PCM up here sends voltage to the coil. There's ground on the other side, voltage on one side, ground on the other side, makes a magnet, pulls the switch closed. My 12 volts goes all the way across and my fuel pump runs. That's normal operation, right? All right, so if I have an open at W, if that fuse is blown, I'm not going to get 12 volts to my fuel pump, and my fuel pump won't work, correct? But would I have 4.93 volts here? No, I'd have 0 volts because my fuse is blown. I got no voltage in the circuit. That's one of my valid distractors, right? That'll make the pump not work. But if you put a fuse in there, it's not fixing it, right? Because a blown fuse would not give me only 5 volts down here. High resistance at X. All right, so if I go right here, if I have high resistance in the circuit is going to drop the voltage going through the circuit, right? So that would mean my 12 volts would be less by the time I got through the relay to over here. That would give me 4.93 volts. All right, that's a possibility. If I put 12 volts on the fuel pump prime connector, doesn't that bypass X? Goes right through, doesn't go through X, and I would get 12 volts and my pump would run. Yeah, high resistance at X is probably our correct answer, but let's not jump at it yet. Let's go on. High resistance at Y. If I had resistance at Y, that would definitely take the 12 volts and drop it before it made it to the pump, right? And it's apparently dropping it to 4.93 volts. But when I put the prime 12 volts on the prime connector, doesn't that 12 volts still have to go through Y? So I would still get low voltage because if the resistance was here, it's blocking the 12 volts from getting there. You guys see that? So Y doesn't completely match the criteria here with the prime connector. And in an open at Z, if I got no ground, again, my pump won't work, but I'm not going to have 4.93 volts here, right? I should have 12 volts here. No ground, it won't work, but I'd still have full voltage in the rest of the circuit. So what's my correct answer? My correct answer is high resistance at X. And again, valid distractors, reading the questions, taking your time, analyzing the diagram. These are tough. These are always tough. Wiring ones we could spend a lot of time talking about, but if you're taking an electrical test, you need to practice some of these wiring diagrams or anything that involves electrical. All right, so let's do a quick overview and be done here. So remember the valid distractor rule. You're going to pick the 100% correct answer, not the one I can kind of make work in my brain, okay? What is the point of the question? What are they trying to check your knowledge of? That may help you understand what the answer is. Eliminate those answers you know are incorrect. So if I know they're incorrect and I got to take a guess, I'm narrowing down my chances of guessing. All right. Look at the diagram chart before reading the question. Don't read into the test question. Technicians, we love doing this. I can make a lot of things work in my brain, right, that aren't really it. most of this stuff is a typical diagnostic scenario. It's what you would see most common. And then answer all the questions. This is your last ditch effort. You got 60 questions and time's running out and you only got 50 of them done. Start guessing. I hate to say that, but an unanswered question is still wrong. And then remember, C is not the most common answer. There was a time when people said this was true. ASE has purposely shuffled the answers, so C is not the most common answer. So randomize your answers if you're guessing. All right, hope that helps. Go out, take your ASE test. Hopefully we'll get you through and we'll get you into expert. Thanks for watching.